The expectation of pleasure. When we anticipate pleasure from our interactions with others, that's what gives rise to feelings of love. It's that desire to be close to what we anticipate will be a pleasure that causes the emotion of love. And I can't stress enough. I'm not talking about the spiritual dimensions of the contract or the covenant or all the things that go with it. Just talking about the emotion. And very simply, what we anticipate as a pleasure is about making deposits in what in Paris we call the love bank. Filling the love bank is about doing the things that tell the other person they're cared about. Not what we would want for ourselves, but what says to you that you're cared about, special and important. That's how we make deposits. So we call that caring behaviors. We call it making deposits in the love bank. And it's just like if you wanted your financial bank account to be full, or at least not to be overdrawn or closed, you have to make deposits in the currency the bank takes. So you couldn't go to to Bank of America and deposit your good deeds, because that's not the currency Bank of America accepts. They take cash. You probably couldn't even go to the local Bank of America and deposit, I don't know, yen, because they probably don't take it. It's not a currency that speaks to them. And it's the same with the people we're close to. We've got to be able to make deposits in the ways that say to the person we're depositing with, you're important, valued, special, cared about. And that can be very different, not just for different people, but even for the same person in different relationships. The way Stephanie makes deposits with me is very different than the way Alex, Michael, or Zachary, my 3 sons, make deposits with me. The way I make deposits in each of their love banks is very different for each of them. It's also different, as I'll get to more in a moment, under special circumstances. The way someone would make a deposit in someone's bank when they're fatigued, or ill, or depressed, or grieving, can be very different than in other times. But how would we know what's a pleasure to the other person? How are we supposed to know? The best mind readers in the world, like Miss Cleo, she was really good till we found out she wasn't. The best mind readers in the world are not very good at it. So if we're walking around with this idea that the people in our life should read our mind, should figure it out, should know what we want, and should just automatically do it, and when they don't, we decide, well, they must not really care, we're setting ourselves up for an awful lot of disappointment. It's so important to be very specific about what you're asking for. If we can't ask for what we want, and for somebody who grew up, for whatever reason, thinking they had to placate, it can be very difficult to ask for what we want. Or other people who grew up that nobody cared what they wanted. It can be very difficult. So if we want to fill each other's love banks, we've got to be able to tell each other that this is what's a pleasure to me today, based on the situation in my life. And it's a moving target, it changes. And I talked about this some yesterday. At some points in our life, it might just be someone that talks to us or listens. Another point, it might be someone who gets up with the baby at night. Another point of life, it might be someone who helps us pay the bills, or someone that we can travel with, or someone who can watch the football game with us, or whatever it is. It changes. But we can't walk around expecting either A, that the other people are supposed to just figure it out and do it, or B, that the golden rule applies. Do unto others as you've all done unto you, and don't do to others what's distasteful to you. But you got to be able to talk to each other. So we say with the love bank there's a 5-to-1 rule. That for every withdrawal, it takes at least 5 deposits to neutralize it. So sometimes a withdrawal is a sarcastic comment, or a promise that we, for whatever reason, didn't keep. Those can take coins out. And that's why some relationships you see are very resilient. They can get through tsunamis and storms and crises of all shapes and sizes because they have deposits. They've been making a lot of deposits and they got a balance. So they can get through difficult times. Other relationships, the slightest wind can blow them over. either because they didn't make any deposits or they've withdrawn them all. So that's the general concept of caring behaviors in the love bank. Those are the 5 areas that we talk about it in, and Dr. Chapman talks about it in terms of some people have different things they value. You know, for some people, what's really important to us is words of affirmation. You know, telling you, I appreciate you, I'm proud of you, I love you, you're meaningful to me. For other people, if you grew up where people said a lot of things they didn't mean, words of affirmation might not be meaningful to you, it might be the exact opposite. But you wouldn't know if the other person couldn't tell you. For other people, what's most important is quality time. It doesn't matter what we do as long as we're together and focused on each other. For others, it might be gifts and presents. For others, it's affection and touch. For others, it might be acts of service. And for all of us, whatever it is today, it may be something different tomorrow. The way Thomas would make a deposit in your love bank would be different than how a colleague would make a deposit. And this is true at work too, that in environments where people are regularly making deposits, helping each other out, asking how somebody is when they come in, saying good morning, supporting each other's success and well-being in the workplace, they also are making deposits. And it has a huge impact not just at home, but also in the workplace. Those are some of the areas, and those are some of the special circumstances. If we're sick, if we're grieving, if we're celebrating, if we're unhappy, if we're afraid, if we're worried. But what's really key is to be able to make a list, to be able to share, here are the specific things that make me feel cared about, such as asking me how I am and listening to the answer, or sending me a picture when you're out doing something with the kids, or having dinner together, or calling me during the day just to say hi, or sending me a daily temperature reading. It's the things that are so important to people are generally things that are in each of our hands. It's not in our hands to win the lottery. It's not in our hands to change the weather. There's a lot of things that aren't in our hands. But making deposits in each other's love banks is in our hands. And kids who get regular deposits are so much more open to staying connected and to working through things. When I married my wife, she came with a huge balance that she had gotten from her own family. She grew up with parents her mom especially was making deposits her whole life. And she brought that balance to my life, which we're still living off of interest. So a woman in Kenya who had done a training, one of our instructors went to Kenya and did a training in an area where there was no electricity, no running water, a lot of challenges. But he called me because one of the women in the class wanted to talk to me about something. So he called me from Kenya, and she said she had gone home to her village and told her husband about what she had learned. And for the first time ever, he had told her how much he appreciated her. And for her, that was priceless, just priceless. We want to be able to make a list and to update that list regularly. Because the way the list looks during deployment is not going to be what the list looks like when you're home. Deployment's definitely a special circumstance and vice versa. And also for the kids, to be conscious and having that conversation of how can we be a pleasure to each other? How can we make deposits in each other's love bank? That sometime between now and tomorrow, come up with and share. You can share it on the phone, you can share it by email, at least 6 to 10 specific things that the other person can do that tell you that you're valued and important.